Good morning, welcome to Glacier Bay National Park. We're leaving the dock here in Bartlett Cove, heading out into the park to see what we see. We're gonna be following our typical day route path up all the way to Margerie Glacier. Join us for the ride. We just left Bartlett Cove and we've come around the corner into Setaukeday Narrows. Setaukeday Narrows acts as a bottleneck into Glacier Bay. All of the water funnels through here with the tides, hitting one of the shallowest parts of the bay. This becomes a very productive part of the bay with all of that churning water. So we see a lot of wildlife here. In fact, we just saw a humpback whale breaching out of the water. We'll keep our eyes out and our binoculars out and see what else we find. The kelp beds we're passing by become great habitat for birds and sea otters. If you can imagine, about 250 years ago, Glacier Bay was filled with a massive glacier. In fact, where we are now would have been under ice. It's that glacier that has shaped and sculpted the bay, formed the landscapes that we see around us today, and that we'll be heading to a little bit later this afternoon. As we go, we'll be able to see the landscape formed by this glacier, the shape of the fjord itself, the deep waterway we're cruising through, and the shapes of the hills and mountains alongside the fjord. We're here in the middle part of Glacier Bay. Behind me are the Marble Islands. Typically on a dayboat tour into the bay, South Marble Island is one of the hot spots. It's a spot to look for a variety of birds and also the stellar sea lions. Today, because of our timing, we're skipping South Marble Island, but if you want to learn more about it and see some of the birds and sea lions that call South Marble Island home, you can check out our social media accounts for a video that we posted a bit earlier in the summer. We're following along the shoreline with hopes of finding some wildlife. Different animals come down to the shore, especially when the tide is out and the beach is exposed, to look for animals to eat. Bears like to come down and lift rocks and dig for mussels and other morsels to eat. Here we are along Gloomy Knob. If you take a look at the landscape, you can really see the effect of the glacier. So you might think of a glacier as a mass of ice, which you're correct, but that mass of ice ends up with a lot of rock inside it. As it moves over the bedrock, picking up rocks as it goes, it turns itself into almost a giant piece of sandpaper, crushing and grinding against the bedrock. So here we can see the result of that glacier crushing and pressing against the bedrock, carving out and sculpting. We see the result of that in all these lines and grooves. We're nearing the upper reaches of the west arm of Glacier Bay, and while we're not seeing any tidewater glaciers, we are seeing some smaller alpine glaciers and remnant glaciers. Other clues that we're getting nearer to the glaciers are the pieces of ice floating in the ocean around us. little icebergs that have broken off from those tidewater glaciers. Here we are at the end of the west arm of Glacier Bay, the very top of Tar Inlet by the Margerie and Grand Pacific Glaciers. Grand Pacific Glacier is dark black with rock, and the Margerie Glacier is that bright white and blue color that you expect a glacier to be. So people often ask us why the Grand Pacific Glacier is so black in color, and it has to do with that heavy layer of rock that's incorporated with the glacier. So remember, a glacier is a mass of ice that's flowing downhill, and as it goes, it picks up rock and it starts to incorporate it into the glacier, almost like a big Oreo milkshake. These two glaciers were once one glacier, in fact, the very glacier that filled the entirety of Glacier Bay. As we navigate through the floating ice out of Tar Inlet, we'll be making our way back down the bay to Bartlett Cove. We'll be leaving Margerie and Grand Pacific Glacier, resting here in the upper reaches of the bay. We really hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into Glacier Bay.